Okay, folks, hey, we're back here. Jeff Landfield. Sorry about the delay, a little bit of a technical difficulty with Facebook Live. So we're on YouTube Live right now, and I think maybe it might go to Facebook at some point. But if you're not on Facebook Live, sorry. Check it on YouTube, and we'll get that worked out later. I'm very excited to be joined here by Senator Bill Wielechowski. How you doing, Senator Wielechowski?
Thanks for having me.
And Matt Shuckerow, political consultant, Fathom Strategies. How you doing?
Good to be here. Yeah, thanks.
Very excited to talk about the 59
Yes.
legislative elections, which are coming up here, and we have some competitive races, a few really not competitive races, and then 7 nobody's running at all, just uncontested. So we'll talk about those. First, I want to thank our sponsors for making these live streams possible. First of all, GCI, internet, telecom, wireless phones, TV. It's great. We have GCI here, and I'm telling you, it's gigabit, and it's so fast. It's kind of a little bit scary. So we want to thank GCI for being one of our sponsors, and then the IBW Local 1547. Union of Mind, Body, Soul, the Union of Skilled Hands and Generous Hearts, helping others, hardworking people on the job and off. It's a union you've come to know as the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, serving Alaska community since 1946, doing electrical and communication. So we want to thank the IBW and GCI for sponsoring the show. And before we start into the races, I think it's really important to talk about, this is a whole different election. This is this single primary, open primary, ranked choice. And I'll start with you, Bill. I think a lot of people that I talk to are still in the primary mindset.
This is a whole different ball game, and I don't think anybody has any real idea how this is going to play out. This is going to be totally unpredictable. I think a lot of races you only have a couple candidates, so obviously no impact there. But in those races where you have 3-4 candidates, it opens up it's just a whole new ball game. And so we'll get into that with some of these races, but I think you're going to see very, very different results based on ranked choice voting than you'd see in a regular primary voting.
Matt, what do you?
Well, look, I know obviously ranked choice is going to play a factor, but I think when you really come down to the districts and you look at redistricting, you look at where we think that the votes are going to go, I think that we see a lot of information of telegraphing where we think the outcomes are going to be. I think it's important to also look, I think we have a lot of insight on where this is going to shape up next legislative session. I know a lot of people are trying to predict who's going to be in majorities, who's going to be in minorities. And I'll say this, I think it's Republicans or center-right candidates kind of positioned to lose. They've been knocking on the door of being in the majority for 2 election cycles. They haven't been able to put it together entirely down in Juno, but I think that the way the shakeup's going to happen with redistricting, I kind of think it's their races to lose in terms of majorities, but obviously that means if you do get elected into majorities, that means you have to lead, and you have to run that test, because leading is sometimes a very challenging aspect of the legislative process.
Well, the last 4 years, the last 19 and 21, the Republicans had slim majorities in the House, and both times it took a month to organize. And even the Senate last time, they had actually a wider majority, and they couldn't organize until the first day of session.
Look at the Senate. This last year, in the last 4 years, I think you've had 65% Republicans, and yet you've had effectively a bipartisan coalition running the Senate, a very moderate coalition. In the House side, you've had a majority of Republicans over Democrats, and you've still had the Democrats in a coalition. So I think the Republicans are in a position where they can take over in the House. I think the Senate's going to be a real uphill battle for them to take over. I think there's a very good chance you're going to have a bipartisan majority in the Senate.
I think, for the folks who follow this stuff, they would understand this, but for the folks that don't, there's almost always a conference committee on the budget, and historically that's been the 2 majority members of each, the House and the Senate finance co-chairs, and there'd be 1 minority member, but they would just kind of be there, and they'd find out when the public found out about the decisions. This last time, you and Bart Lebon, the minority members, were actually really involved in the process.
Completely inclusive process where Senator Stedman, Senator Bishop literally locked us in the room. I mean, that's a story we can tell another day, but Bert Stedman
that was the barricade.
Literally barricaded the finance room twice, once in his office, and said nobody's coming or going until we get this budget done. But yeah, we were in the room, and we had input, and it was valuable input, and I think we came up with what most people consider to be a pretty decent budget.
Well, we have 59 races, so we're gonna go ahead and go through them one at a time. And again, some of them are very uncompetitive. A few people, 7 of them have no aren't contested, and then there's several that are actually going to be interesting races. So only one actually, the open Adam Wool race in Fairbanks, has more than 4 people. So as of now, the only factor where the only race where the primary is going to be a factor is the Adam Wool race with 5 people. So we'll get to that. So we'll start with the House. I want to thank Trent for running the show here for us. We'll queue up the first one. This is a Ketchikan, Wrangell, Matt LeCatler. Rep. Dan Ortiz is the incumbent. I looked around. I'm not really sure who these folks are, but Dan always seems to pull it off. And he runs as a petition candidate. He doesn't even run in the Democratic primary. I mean, he pulls it off as a petition. So I think, Dan Ortiz is probably...
I think Ortiz is going to win that race. I think he's been there for a while. He's well liked among both sides. It's a pretty conservative district, as people who know that area. But Dan's been on the finance committee. He's delivered for Ketchikan. He's the vice chair of the finance committee. He was on the conference committee this past year. I think it's going to be a tough race for him to lose.
I'll say, I think we pulled some numbers, right? Like, a lot of people are referencing back to 2020 numbers. These are not monolithic. They're not going to answer all our questions, but they provide some insight. And, President Trump received around 14% of the vote in 2020 in that district. The districts have changed a little bit. I went back and looked at some numbers. Senator Sullivan won that district by 14.5%. And Representative Ortiz won by 21%. So, I mean, he does perform well. And, I've spent a lot of time in Ketchikan traveling over the years. They're definitely they're a conservative district, but they're a chamber of commerce type of business community that, everything's intertwined. They have the Vigor shipyard, everything that runs on repairing the ferries, small work. They're looking for kind of a moderate center-right candidate maybe, and I think Ortiz has kind of filled that a little bit. So
they want those ferries. So let's go to number 2. This is the vacant JKT Jonathan Christ-Tompkins seat, which is Sitka, Petersburg, Yakutat. Rebecca Himschoot, everybody seems to kind of get behind her, the progressives and Democrats, but this Skaffelstad guy, he's run before against JKT. So, I think this is probably a Democrat district, but 2 people. Again, for the folks watching, with the races with just 2 people, the primary is going to be kind of like a preview of the general. So we'll kind of see how many people get the votes, but the general is going to have higher turnout. But this is one of those races where it's just 2 people.
That's going to be interesting to see. I know in years past, Republicans, because more people would take the Republican ballot, there's so many more registered Republicans and Democrats in the state, Republicans would always very much outperform in primaries. So this is going to be really interesting to see now because everyone gets the same ballot. And so I think that's going to change the dynamic a little bit just in that regard. But Rebecca Himschoot running as an independent, I don't know either candidate. I know Jonathan Christ-Tompkins, very well liked in that district. It's a pretty progressive district, a pretty, I'd say, center-left district. He's supporting her. He's working hard to get her elected. It looks like it's probably hers to lose.
Let's go to number 3, House District 3, Andy Story. Congratulations. Good work there, Andy Story. No, I was surprised actually. I mean, that was the old Munoz seat, right? And that's not like a super Democratic district. So
that's a little bit of a surprise to see no one running. And I think Juno, what you've seen in Juno over the years is it's definitely trending a little bit more leftward. And that is a district where you've seen moderate Republicans win, and it was a surprise.
I heard Bill Thomas was going to run for that. Did you hear that? He was talking about it. Actually,
I know that and whether that was what I read it on one of your blogs or Twitter posts or I don't know, but that name definitely came up. I mean, look, I think the shakeup of what these districts look like. I think there's like this one, based on the numbers that are getting run. It's in the 2020 race, 19% voted for Biden. I mean, that's an increase, a significant increase, 8% increase from the 2020 race of what this district looks like now. So, I mean, it's not. If you look at the breakdown of voters, I guess I'm not surprised that maybe a moderate Republican didn't throw their name in the ring. But I think it's interesting too that also now, when we look at the districts, it now contains Haines and Skagway, so it kind of it included some of those areas that were previously left out of that district. So it's North Juno and then stretches all the way up to Haines and Skagway.
Yeah, and Douglas is Hannon. So let's go to number 4, House District 4. Sarah Hannon's the incumbent, and then I don't know who this Daryl Harmon person is, but I think Hannon's very well liked in Juno, so I don't see this.
Yeah, that district's a Biden 36.5%.
It's a big one.
So
it's a downtown Juno. Right there.
Well, and that's what's interesting. So this district, it took, that district previously was downtown Juno, circled back to Douglas, went up to Haines and Skagway. It was this weird, almost like C-shaped, and they've removed the Haines and Skagway, put that in Andy Story's district. But so it went from a 40% Biden vote to a 36, so they lopped off 5%, but it's still a very, very progressive district.
I think what you're seeing statewide is, I looked at the numbers too, and back in 2020 there was 89% more Republicans than Democrats, so it's almost 2 to 1. It dropped a little bit in 2022 to 85%, so the Democrats picked up a few more voters, registered voters, but I think what you're seeing is consolidation. I think you're seeing in Democratic areas like Juno, like Downtown Anchorage, you're seeing a shift where more people are identifying as Democrat, and then in the Republican areas, you're seeing more people identifying as
some people are
Republican.
just moving. Like I hear a lot of people that are moving to the Valley because they want to get out of, Republicans or conservatives. So there's probably some of that. That's happening nationally. A lot of people Republicans moved to Florida and Texas, and Democrats moved to New York and California. We've saw that with the last census. So it's probably happening here on a more local level.
I'm sure it is, yeah.
It's the big sort, they're calling it. District 5, Kodiak, Cordova. That's Luis Stutz, the speaker. This guy filed for another race too, and then he was disqualified, and then he actually wasn't qualified for this one for residency requirements, but then he was qualified all of a sudden, so I'm not sure about
Well,
this.
I think his name, is Benjamin Vincent. We have it on the screen as Vincent.
Oh, did I mess that up? That's my fault then.
No, and I only know that. I think that they do. He has a twin brother who I think his name's Matt, who do some real estate, and they do projects here in Kodiak. And I've met them just once or twice. I don't know that much about them, but it sounds like that they do live in Kodiak. And I will say, in terms of Speaker Stutz in that position, that district, she lost areas like Yakutat, the Western Cook Inlet, Seldovia, Halibut Cove. Those areas have been removed from that district. So, I mean, arguably it gets a little bit more conservative. The numbers say that it's a 13% Trump favorite from if you're looking back. It increased from 11% to 13%. So it's definitely something to look at, and what that means for Kodiak. I mean, largely the precincts are coming from Kodiak Island itself.
I mean, depending if this guy is serious and if he has money and a real campaign, the Republicans obviously have really been frustrated with Stutz for going back 6 years. So maybe one to watch. The another one to watch is District 6, Sarah Vance, the incumbent. This is the Homer kind of area, Anchor Point. Now there's two challengers, Louis Flora and Ginger Bryant, but I hear a lot about this Louis Flora person. I keep hearing this name come up.
Yeah, this is, it's a pretty conservative area, and Louis Flora, longtime family name, well known down in the area. You got two independents versus Sarah Vance, who's a Republican, obviously the incumbent. It's a pretty conservative area, but this is one where ranked choice voting, I think, could be interesting.
Because you're going to have the Republican and then two independents, and what do they do? How do they? Who votes for Louis and this Ginger person, and then do they vote for somebody Sarah Vance second or
right?
No?
And so you'd have to figure Sarah Vance being the incumbent probably first, and then one of the independents in second, and then the way the ranked choice voting works is that third place votes get knocked off, and then they go to the second place.
Mm-hmm.
So is the combined independent sort of center-left vote enough?
More than 51%.
Right, more than 51 to overcome Sarah Vance.
And then we have this, I think we should talk about a little bit ballot drop off. I think a lot of people don't understand this. They're going to go vote. They're a real Republican or they're a real Democrat. They're going to vote for one person and not vote for two or three or four. Maybe if it's two Republicans, they might go 1, 2, or two Democrats, 1, 2. But if it's like a person who's kind of some independent who might get 5 or 6%, but you don't vote, a second place.
If you feel passionately about one of your candidates, you're probably just going to go in there and vote for that candidate. You're probably not going to go in and rank somebody that you absolutely are diametrically opposed to. And so what I've heard in ranked choice voting in other states, other countries, is there can often be a 50% drop off.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important. It changes the dynamic in these elections because I think it really encourages people to be nice to other people, to not run just these scorched earth types campaigns. Because if you do run that type of scorched earth campaign, then it's probably unlikely that people are going to support you. If you're attacking somebody's favorite candidate, it's unlikely they're going to run you second, right?
Yeah, so I went and looked at, I was kind of perusing around some of the websites that are out there. This woman, Ginger Bryant, she appears to be a pretty nice woman. She she kind of says she acknowledged that she's a latecomer. It was one of those I'm throwing my hat in the ring, which I think was an interesting way to look at it. She had a couple Facebook just direct to camera from an iPhone, but I did look at Louis Flores' campaign, his website. I mean, it looks pretty legitimate. It looks like he will be the person to be kind of the counterpunch to Sarah Vance. He's a commercial fisherman, fished out in Bristol Bay. I mean, I will say, I at least what I saw, he works for the Alaska Center, which I think you could probably use that as a.
That's not going to help.
I don't think that's going to help. Now, look, he works on renewable energy policy, which I think a lot of Republicans are kind of turning around on and seeing that there's a lot of strength here. He does some work. I think he's on the Homer Electric Association board. So, again, it's just one of these things where it sounds like he's integrally involved in the community and.
Well, I mean, they poured resources into.
Kelly Cooper.
Yeah. And she didn't win. So I think Vance probably has the upper hand on that one.
Yeah, and I would say, like I look back on the numbers, like Sarah underperformed President Trump. She underperformed Senator Sullivan and Congressman Young in that district that Kelly Cooper was able to eat in a little bit. But Sarah still won that district by almost 8%, and it hasn't marginally changed that much. So, again, I think it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard to beat. And Kelly Cooper's kind of another known quantity down there.
She was the president of the Matsu Borough, or the Kenai Peninsula Borough School Assembly. So, going to number 7, District 7, this is Soldotna. And I'm sorry to Rep. Ron Gillum. I did these in a hurry. I had my graphics person do it, and I forgot to put Incumbent by Rep. Ron Gillum, so I apologize about that. But Justin Ruffridge is a Republican. I'm not too familiar with this person, but Gillum's kind of a legend down there. He almost beat Machicki in 2018 in the Senate primary with no money. It was 60 votes.
Came out of nowhere, almost beat this Senator Machicki, and yeah, I think he's entrenched himself. I think it's going to be pretty hard to get him out of there. I don't think he's voted against his constituents in any meaningful way, but I don't know Justin Ruffridge, and I don't know.
Yeah, so he's
Matt's a Republican go-to here.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, maybe I'm a studied guy here, but he's a pharmacist. He owns a place called Soldotna Professional Pharmacy. This is why I see it. Like down on the peninsula, there is this debate where it's this. For example, for the Kenai Peninsula Borough Mayor, the last race was Charlie Pierce versus Linda Hutchings, and that is they're all Republicans down there for the most part, but there is a divide of are you this type of Republican or are you another type of Republican? So. I'm not going to say he's one type or the other. It appears that he may be more of a Linda Hutchings type Republican versus a Charlie Pierce Republican. And we kind of have seen what that shakeup looks like. I
just think with almost beating Machicki in 2018 and then coming in 2020, and he kind of looks like a Republican. You ever see him, Bill, in the Capitol? I mean, he's got the cowboy boots and the hat. I mean, he's just.
Yeah, I saw him post something on the internet the other day on Facebook or somewhere. He said he was coming back from Juno. Came off the airplane with his cowboy boots and his hat on, and someone welcomed him and said, "Welcome to Alaska," and he told that story and he kind of chuckled. But he kind of fits this model down there. That district is it's like essentially Fred Meyer as you're pulling into Soldotna, all the way down to the mouth of the Kenai to the Kenai Airport. It's that. I mean, it's a small district in relation to all the other districts down there.
So going on to District 8, the Kiski area, Rep. Ben Carpenter. Congratulations, Ben. There it is. I'm kind of surprised. He's been a little bit polarizing, but I think maybe they like it down there. So,
conservative district. He was not going to lose that race.
Yeah. So he's could. Congratulations, Ben.
Yeah, and that's I I think Trump won that in 2020.
Oh, it's like
41.
It's huge. Yeah.
And then the new district is even a little more conservative, 46. I will say that district's interesting because Carpenter used to represent Sterling, Nikiski, so all the way on the western side of the Kenai Peninsula, and then he would actually represent an area that stretched all the way down into Seward. So he kind of had these two communities that have different politics, a little bit different priorities. Seward is now squeezed out, is no longer part of that district. That Seward is actually now part of Louis Stutz's district, so it's an interesting little change. But
yeah, there was a big with redistricting. There was a lot of discussion about Seward. I remember.
Yeah.
So going to District 9, we're getting into Anchorage now. This is the Laddie Shaw's, the incumbent. Whoops, something happened there. That must have been my fault. That should say Why does that say that? That's my fault, folks. It should say Rick Castillo and David Schaff.
Yep.
So I don't know what happened there. That was a mix-up. But this is the Laddie Shaw incumbent race. This is South Anchorage. This is a very Republican district. I think Laddie's probably going to win. If Rick were to somehow win, though, he did really well against LaFrance in, I think, 2020. It really wouldn't matter as far as organization because he's going to go with the Republicans.
Yeah, Laddie is kind of a legend. I think he's going to be tough to beat. But Castillo ran a good race for the Assembly, and David Schaff is a former National Labor Relations Board representative here in Alaska. He's well known within labor circles. He'll probably get labor support, but it's a tough district for a Democrat.
Yeah, and I'll say, I know Rick. Rick's a real nice guy, young guy, up and comer. He's run for office. He's run for, thrown his hat in the ring for Assembly, and it was Rick for the 6th or something.
Rick
like
for
that.
the 6th.
Yeah, and ran in that district for.
He got real, I think it was like 48 or 49 with LaFrance. It was like really close. Fairly close,
and he ran in the 2020 Assembly race. He's a veteran. He works in telecommunications, and he actually, I was pulling up some people's disclosures. He does some work in healthcare on the Capstone Clinic stuff in a consulting role. But look, I'm very curious about this. Like, I think Rick is kind of one of those up and comers who could run for office. I think that there was a lot of talk by folks about retirement, and was Laddie going to run or not run? And I think
there was a lot of discussion about Laddie not running. I mean, I heard that a lot the last.
And I think
6 months.
the level of acrimony in Juno, I think, as we've seen with a lot of different candidates, that they were like, all right, now's my time. So maybe Laddie was considering not, and Rick kind of got the wrong signal, or not. But Rick is in this race, and I think he's running, and he's going to run hard. But I still am inclined to think Laddie is the candidate to certainly beat.
Yeah, no, I apologize to Laddie or Rick and Dave for that. That was my mistake with the graphic. House District 10, this is an open South Anchorage House. This is kind of the first one where we're really going to see a ranked choice if everybody stays in the race. And I should also mention that with this new voting system, if you drop out, there's no more replacements. So if anybody drops out of any of these races, like, that's it. It goes from 4 to 3 or 3 to 2 or whatever. So Craig Johnson, former representative, it's a conservative district, but there's 2 Democrats. Sue Levi's run a lot over the last decade, and this libertarian guy, I went on his Facebook. This guy seems kind of like my kind of people. Libertarians are generally my kind of people. So
it's a pretty conservative district. I think Carolyn Storm will put up a great fight. She's a good candidate. It's I think Sue Levi has run before. She's her definitely doing it for the reasons the right reasons from her perspective, but in the end of things, it's just a tough district. It's a very conservative district. The one thing, Craig Johnson, he did lose his last race, and to the extent that's on people's minds.
Well, I was involved in that one when he had the House seat locked up. Yeah. And then he went for the Senate at the end. Me and von Imhoff and him, and it was so weird. He didn't really even campaign. He just put up big PFD signs all over South Anchorage.
We can't overlook this. Like Jeff, we got to talk about this a little bit. Like, Jeff was in the primary for the Senate. This is the seat that Lisa McGuire vacated. She retires. You run, Natasha von Imhoff runs, Craig Johnson runs.
He came in at the last minute.
And he still beat you, though.
He did. I know. Yeah. Well, I mean, I've run twice in that area, and I've always done well in the Taku kind of part of the district, Campbell. But then I get creamed in Ocean View, Bayshore.
Was this the year you walked out of the lake in the Speedo?
Yes, it was.
Okay. See, that's just
But that was in 15, and he didn't come in until May of 16. I mean, it was literally at the end, and that's when McKay got, or was it, no?
Well, and I'll say this: he served.
Chuck Kopp, sorry.
And again, it sounds like he served 10 years in the legislature. This district is pretty much his old district. It's
it hasn't changed at all.
It's very similar. He won it, and I looked it up. He won in 2014 and in 2012 with 63% of the vote. So he performed pretty well in this district. But again, he got a little ambitious. He ran for the Senate, and Natasha von Imhoff came in, and you gave him a run for money. He actually could have won.
I think I beat him in the 23 seat. Okay, so just give me that.
He could have won if you didn't run.
Don't remind me.
Okay.
And he also sent out a mailer calling me Alaska's worst nightmare. Remember my Juno's worst nightmare sign? He sent out me and the Speedo and the women with a Speedo censored, and it said Alaska's worst nightmare. Sent it to every house in the district, and I got maybe 100 text messages with that. So I don't think it helped me, but it put me on the
And
map
I
a
will
little
say,
more.
interesting part about that race is who Natasha faced in the general.
Oh, don't even.
Which was,
and she's back in the friggin' Senate
well, no,
race
but
we'll talk about.
he faced Forrest McDonald in that year's Senate.
As a Democrat.
Oh, Rosalind Casey was in. Yeah.
Yeah,
was
different year.
20
So, anyways,
well,
I just say that because Forrest McDonald, now Jay McDonald, is running as a Republican in a different race.
Yeah,
So
we'll get to him in a
we'll
few.
get to him
in
in a little
few
bit. So.
races. So, going on to we're only on 11 out of 40, and we got the Senate. Woo! Better start speeding up here. Number 11. This is the South Anchorage seat, open seat because Kaufman's running for the Senate. Yesterday, Jennifer Son, who's very active on Twitter, announced she's getting out of the race. She hasn't withdrawn yet and endorsing Walt Featherly. Walter Featherly, a very well-known attorney. He's corporate counsel for Chalista. Ross Beeling has run before many times against Jennifer Johnston. And then Julie Colomb, I know her from my book club. She's in my book club. And she's kind of one of these very Republican, kind of.
This is going to be an
folks, so-
interesting race. I think this is a race where Walt Featherly could definitely win this race. This could be a flip. He's a pretty moderate. He's an attorney, works for Chalista. He'll be able to raise, I think, unlimited funds. So he will be the leading fundraiser, I think, in this district. And I think that's a race to keep an eye on. He could win that race.
But I'll say this, remember, so this is James Kaufman's kind of current district, but remember, James's district, Representative Kaufman running for Senate, and Laddie Shaw's district have kind of flopped, right? So in many ways, this is kind of like Laddie's district. It's essentially the current Laddie district, and so it's just something to think about. Looking at the numbers, the numbers say it's potentially, if you go back, it's a Trump +9. So it's going to be interesting. I think that people do know Walter Featherly. He's been around for a long time. He was on the Anchorage School Board for.
He was part of that kind of infamous recall.
Yeah.
In like 91, I think, where there was 3 people on the school board that got. I think there was some kind of, I don't know, somebody was.
Yeah, he served on the school board 91 or 93, was school board president at some point. Again, this is before I was involved in politics. I looked I've worked with Walter on something before because of his work on federal Indian policy, et cetera. But I mean, I'll be curious to see who kind of comes out as the leading Republican, because it's a Republican.
I think his only chance is to win on the first round, to get all the center-left vote and enough kind of center-right moderate Republicans, because Julie and Ross are going to share the other votes.
I think it's going to depend. If one of those candidates, if Ross or Julie goes way to the right, I think that might scare some of their supporters in the second round. And
Yeah, this isn't like a big PFD district. This isn't like
Right.
a valley type.
Right.
This is moderate.
This is a pretty
business
moderate
Republican.
area, and I think if you look, or in the last few election cycles, particularly on the federal races, you've seen progressives, Democrats, moderates starting to do a lot better down in South Anchorage. You've got you got moderate assembly people being elected down there. So yeah, this is definitely a race to keep an eye on.
I mean, LaFrance got really close to. It was Kaufman, right? 2 years ago, it was 47, 48%. So it wasn't like a big win, for Kaufman.
Yeah, I'll be curious who. I mean, I will say, Republicans and party officials, I think that they would like to probably. They would like to see it go down to one candidate. I can only imagine, right? It only hurts Republicans' chances to have.
Well, I'll tell you what, Ross ain't getting out. I'll tell you that right now. He's been running for 8 years.
Yeah.
So yeah, well, and again, people can still drop out.
Well, and
even
interestingly,
until after the primary. I think 10 days after the primary, you can drop out.
I think that's where Ross Beeling has shown he has been willing. He has a willingness to put up some of his own money. I think at one point he put up, if I'm recalling correctly, a large number.
He ran for Congress in Florida and put in like $250,000
Yeah.
into the race, and I think he got like 5th. But he has, I think, medical patents or some medical devices.
Yeah,
and
he does medical equipment sales.
He's doing well.
Yeah.
Let's go to District 12, another South Anchorage district. This is Rep. Schrage, the incumbent, and then Jay McDonald, formerly Forrest McDonald. I'm kind of surprised there's only 2 people in this district. This is the one, I helped Mel get Gillis out with his campaign. This district's changed a little bit, but I helped him out 2 years ago, and we thought Mel needed 3,900 votes to win. And Mel got 4,200 votes, and he still lost because of this kind of really high turnout. So, I think it'd be really, and he was Democrat before Forrest. He went to Republican. I think he was a staffer for a little bit, and I think he might have, burned a few bridges. So,
Calvin ran a fantastic campaign that last election
Oh, I
cycle.
know. I was,
And
yeah,
Tell me about it.
I would not go away. He was everywhere.
So what does that make your election record there? Because you were managing that campaign.
Not great. It's not great. Yeah.
But he's a good candidate. He's moderate. He fits the district. He I think did a great job in the legislature. He got a lot done. So I think Calvin, it's his race to lose, I would say.
Let's go to third.
Well, I would say, yeah. I mean, that's an interesting district. I'll say this about Forrest or Jay. I know he's going by Jay now. He's actually known in certain political circles as being a data guy, like the guy who's pulling walk lists, who's doing the back end organizing. And I think in many ways that's where a lot of people believe his strength is, which is he's the kind of the background data guy. I know he has he has aspirations to run for office. He's run a couple times, ran against Natasha, and so anyways, I will say I looked at his public disclosure. He had a funny line. He had reported $5,000 to $10,000 for a child tax credit and economic impact statement, quote, from the Department of Treasury that I did not ask for, but they sent it out to everyone, so oh well. I mean, I had to highlight that because I had a chuckle, and that's kind of Forrest's sense of humor.
And the folks, that are, and we could talk about this a little more broader, but the folks that are trying to keep the coalition together are going to dump money in these races like Calvin's race. And then the folks who are trying to kill the coalition and form a Republican-led majority are also trying to put money into so some of these races could see a lot of, and now we have unlimited donations. The bill, well, that's another podcast. At the end of the 30 minutes left, I'm standing there. Everybody thinks I'm involved. I'm just watching. It's like 30 minutes before the end of session, you guys are trying to get this bill done to limit campaign contributions, and it didn't happen. We can talk about that later, but right now there's unlimited contributions in Alaska. I mean, not you can get 500 or 5,000 or 5 million to any of these candidates. So let's go to 13. This is my district. Andy Josephson and Chris Tuck were paired. They both filed. Kathy Hensley ran against Tuck in 2020. She lost to Zolotel recently, and then Hewitt's run before as Republican and Independence Party. But I mean, they've said publicly now that one of them is not going to run. That's been reported by several people in the.
Well, that's Tucker Josephson.
Yeah, they've kind of said they're not going to run. I mean, I think Tuck has a really good shot in a three-way race if Andy were to get out. Andy would have a harder time because Andy only retained one of his precincts from his old district.
I think it's mostly Tuck's district that he's currently in.
It's like 70%.
Yes, and he's currently won. I pulled up some data on this, and one of the things that I've looked at over the years is the percentage of Republicans to Democrats. I think that if you only have 7 districts in the entire state, House districts, where there are more Democrats than Republicans, and yet you have a combined Senate and House, 22 Democrats in the House and Senate. So Democrats, when you have an even number of Republicans to Democrats always win those races. And Democrats typically win even when you have 20, 30% more Republicans than Democrats. In fact, Democrats have won in races where you have twice as many Republicans as Democrats. This district is an interesting one because in 2012 you had 52% more Republicans than Democrats, and Chris Tuck won that. By 2020 that had dropped to 30%, which is very winnable. And then 2022 it's dropped a further, the same exact district, to 25%. Now, Tuck picked up an Andy Josephson precinct, which is predominantly Democrat, and he lost, or rather he
also picked up a Sarah
Rasmussen precinct. So that probably balances out, and so it's still probably about 25% more Republicans than Democrats, which is very winnable for a Democrat. Even either Andy or Tuck can win that seat. But because it's Chris's, he probably has the advantage.
I've walked that district many times.
But you know the district,
for the Senate, and people, Republicans especially, always say, "You're not running against Chris, are you?" I like Chris. I mean, it's like he's been there since 2008. And last time he ran, it was Tuck, Hensley, and Hewitt. Hewitt was Independence Party, and he got like 9%, and Kathy got 43%. So if Hewitt would not have been in the race, that would have been a very, very close race.
That's going to be a race to watch, no doubt.
Yeah, I mean, it's essentially a redo of the 2020 election, right? And I think one thing we haven't really talked about is we'll see if turnout's going to be a factor. I mean, in a presidential year, we on average see around 60% turnout. We generally can count on. So that's the factor you're talking about in this last Mel Gross race. This overwhelming push in a presidential year. I mean, but in a non-presidential year, it's generally around 50%. And maybe there's a little more attention with the governor's race, with 59 legislative races.
Murkowski race.
Murkowski, but I think we can a lot of people would say we can expect 52, 53, but we're probably not going to get to 60% like we would see in a presidential race.
Let's go to District 14. This is Midtown. This is the Elise Galvin, Nick Danger. He's run for mayor before. He does a few votes, but I mean, I think Elise Galvin's going to just win this one, so not much to. I mean, you guys have anything you want to say? She's pretty locked in.
She's going to win. She's going to raise a ton of money, and she's going to win that.
Well, and I'll say this: she
raised like $90,000 too on the first report that came out in February. I mean, it was the highest. She had the highest fundraising of every candidate who had been raising money.
Well, I'll say this: if you go look at Elise Galvin's assets, her website and everything, it looks nice, right? Because they can take their existing assets, their creative, all the campaigns, the hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they have it already buttoned up, ready to go. So there are advantages that she's run. And if you go look, I mean, you see that in other candidates. You see that in the federal races with Al Gross just being able to slap a U.S. Senate, U.S. Congress. I mean, it's nice. It's a package.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be, if she had a real opponent, maybe this Nick Danger guy runs all the time, and he's kind of perennial. And
very Democratic district.
Yeah, I mean, that's a Biden plus 20, so.
Let's go on to 15. This is a little bit interesting. Rep. Tom McKay, who's the incumbent, he beat Chuck Kopp in 2020, and then Denny Wells, he's a pretty well-known Democrat, and then David Ibeck, Republican. But this is still it's not a super conservative district, but it's a Republican-leaning district.
Yeah,
you were talking about, Bill, some of these districts where, I mean, does he have a chance, Denny? I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know that race at all. I have nothing to base it on. Incumbency I think is going to be a factor. Obviously, I don't know how much the district's changed. It's probably McKay's to lose, but I don't know.
Yeah, so this district is like, if you think about, it's like it extends west to the gravel pits area, it goes to Diamond High School, and then it cuts south to Campbell Lake, and then Bayshore, and all the way down to Discovery. And I grew up in that area. I went to Diamond High School. Look, I'll say about Tom, he's a strong candidate because he's from that area. He's raised his family in that area. And I think he just had a college or high school senior that just graduated from Diamond, played hockey. Tom was also really big into like rebuilding the Bayshore Elementary School's hockey rink. So all politics is local. He's a little bit engaged in that space. So you're right. The district is not. It's within the margin of kind of toss-up margin. But I do think that. Tom knows that district. He's been in that district for a long time.
This is like the Featherly one. I mean, Denny Wells would probably have to get half the vote on the first round because that Ibeck person is probably not going to get very many, but whatever he does get is probably going to go to McKay. So that's going to be one to watch. Let's go to the 16, West Anchorage. This is the one where it's open because Clayman's running for the Senate, which we'll talk about in a little bit. This one's interesting. This Armstrong, she kind of came out at the end, and she seems to have a lot of Democratic support. She seems very progressive based on her Twitter.
A lot of Democratic support. I think she's, a lot of support. And it's a pretty Democratic district. I don't know how much that district, I don't know that
I think it's like,
changed.
it was a Biden plus 15.
Biden plus 15.
Yeah.
I think before it was like a Biden plus 7 or something.
Yeah, but just looking back historically at the numbers of the Clayman district anyway, which is I think a huge chunk of this, in 2020 you had 8% more Republicans than Democrats, and it was a very Democratic district at that time, and then it's gone to 3.5%. So it's gone a little bit more Democratic. I think that's a progressive seat. That's going to stay Democratic.
We do have our first, put the screen back up, we do have our first Constitution Party candidate, Richard Beck. So, and then Liz, she run for one-term rep, and then she runs for school, assembly, and runs for legislature. She's kind of she's ran for assembly recently. So,
and I mean that's in fairness, don't undercut the name recognition in a race like that. She's run a bunch of times, and people know her, and so this is not a slam dunk for Jennifer. She's going to have to work hard and get out and door knock. But
I think it's a slam dunk. Then I'll say, look, I think Liz has run a number of times. She served one term in the legislature. She was defeated in a primary by Sarah Rasmussen. She was defeated by, I think she was defeated by Sarah Rasmussen and.
I thought Gren beat her in 16.
So Rasmussen ran. If my recollection serves me well, Rasmussen ran against her in the primary, the Republican primary. Rasmussen squeaked by, and maybe not squeaked by, but Rasmussen ran against Dustin Darden and Jason Grenn in the general election.
Yeah. So Dustin Darden helped Grenn win in 16, and then he helped Grenn lose in 18. But
since then, Liz has run for assembly on two different occasions, losing. She's ran against Cameron twice and lost. Cameron Perez Verdilla lost by 10%. So it'll be interesting. I think that that's one of those other districts where Matt Clayman did not announce very. I mean, I think a lot of people knew that it was in the cards for him to run for Senate, but I think that. Given the district shakeup and given the support that Jennifer has already shown, I think it's probably her race to lose.
I would agree with that. It's definitely a Democratic district. I guess my only pause is just looking at she's the only Democrat, and then you've got 3 center-right candidates running. And so in ranked choice voting, how does that shake out? Does she win it on the first round? Probably not. And so she's going to have to rely on Republican Alaska Constitution Party candidate to be her second or third choice.
Unless there's that drop-off we talked about, if these people just don't,
But she's still going to have, still got to get 50 plus 1. So does she get 50 plus 1 in the first round? Very Democratic district. It's possible.
Yeah, I will say I think Liz is going to be the primary Republican candidate that these two, they'll poll small margins, 4 or 5%, 3%, and Liz is going to be the bulk of the Republican vote in that district. She's organized. She knows how to run a campaign, and she's done it before. She has an apparatus, and she'll work it for sure, and she'll door knock. I think, again, we can roll the tape in 6 months from now. I think it's going to be a tough race for anyone but Jennifer here.
Let's go to 17, Downtown Anchorage. This is a good one. This is going to be. Oh, again, my fault. Drummond should say incumbent too. So sorry about that, Rep. Drummond. This is interesting race. They're both running, and it's obviously Democratic district and 2 Democrats. So I don't know. Fields is kind of a ferocious campaigner, but Drummond's got a lot of support too from Bill. Maybe this is your world.
Yeah, tough. Friends with both. It's a tough race to call. Zach is a ferocious campaigner. Drummond's been around forever. She's very well liked, very well known. Obviously, been on the school board, been on the assembly, been in the state house for a long time. A tough race to call.
I spent a lot of time in that area, downtown. There's a lot of Zach Field signs out and about. If my recollection holds, it is a majority Zach district. Harriet got kind of carved in there, so it's mostly Zach's district. I will say this, this is where we can talk about when we talk about that Senate race. This district is one of the districts that makes up Tom Begich's district for the Senate, and we can talk about that a little down the road. If I were one of these candidates, I would be a little bit mad that Tom Begich...
Oh, yeah, no, I think Tom has earned loose unit status this week. And I heard a rumor 3 weeks ago, maybe he was, and I just dismissed it, that he wasn't running. And so we'll talk about that, how he kind of positioned his staffer to be in there. But if I was Zach or Harriet, I would have been... but then they got sideways on the reading bill. Zach and Tom, that was maybe a factor, right?
We don't need to put Bill on a hard spot.
Yeah, don't put me in that spot.
Okay, let's go on.
It's certainly a worthwhile discussion. One of these current sitting representatives is no longer going to be serving. They certainly had a path to, if Tom Begich was going to retire, they certainly had a path. It clearly shows that Tom Begich didn't, he kind of hand selected his staff member to replace him, and
you got to watch those filings, man. You got to wait till the last minute.
It's very fascinating.
And again, apologize to Rep. Drummond. She should have also been listed as the incumbent. Going on to 18, this is an interesting race again. Rep. Nelson's the incumbent. He narrowly beat Lynn Franks a couple years ago, and then Cliff Grove's been. If his social media is any indication of his campaigning, he seems to be very actively campaigning.
This is going to be a fascinating race. You've got Rep. Nelson, who keeps a big chunk of his district. He keeps the chunk in North Muldoon. He keeps J-Bear, but then he's got to pick up and deal with Government Hill, which is a very, very progressive area. And then you got Cliff Grove, who is just, like you said, out door knocking, raising money, and you got Lynn Franks, who ran a really good campaign against David Nelson just a couple of years ago and only lost by a few votes. So just looking, I pulled up some numbers on this race, and it just sort of goes to the trend I think that you're seeing in East Anchorage. When I first ran, because District 15, which is now comprised of a chunk of 18, it's east side, northeast Anchorage, used to be 78% more Republican in 2012. A very, very tough district. By 2020, that had dropped to 55%, mostly because of the base, because you have a huge number of Republicans in the base. That dropped to 34% in 2022. So just that's, I would venture to say, one of the biggest shifts from Republicans to Democrats in the state in District 15. And a huge chunk of that came on JBER, where you lost hundreds of people registered as Republicans who registered either undeclared, nonpartisan, and then you had an increase in.
If Nelson can't get 50% plus one on the first round, the question is, how do these Cliff and Lynn votes go back and forth?
Lynn Franks, I think the dividend's going to be an issue in that race because you have people in North Anchorage, the dividend's big. I think on the base, the dividend's a big issue. Then over on the Government Hill side, it's a very different philosophy. So that's going to be a fascinating race to watch.
And Cliff ran too, and he ran against Fields and Elias Rojas back in, I think it was 18. So he's it's going to be one to watch. I agree. It's going to be a lot of money in that race.
Yeah, I ran into him I was at Noosa Guy, and he was sitting there. This is downtown Noosa Guy. He was sitting there working, and I just said, hello, how's the race going? I mean, I'll talk to anyone. And he just seemed really excited. He was like, I'm hitting doors. Some doors I've already hit 4 times.
Remember he ran in 18, he had the cartoon with the grow, like he was like a superhero, and the mailer that went out that was his, and there's a grow gallery. That's his dad, right?
Yeah.
And the house gallery, the grow gallery, is his dad. So.
Well, and we'll see. Like to your point, it's going to be a turnout game. I think Nelson is in a little bit of a disadvantage because you can't just go on to base and campaign, right? It's not. There are a lot of registered voters there.
But he's military, so
But you still can't campaign on base, and regardless. And
so
really? It's really difficult. So you can do mail, but you can't knock doors. So, but I still think there's always a chance with a turnout game. I think David Nelson isn't going to take anything for granted. I think he's going to take a couple of passes at this district and just pound pavement. So we'll see what happens, but I know that people are running hard for this, and it looks like the way the district shakes up. I mean, it was a toss-up district before. It slightly favoring Trump, and now it's a toss-up.
I think Frank's got 48 or 49. It was like really close.
She came very close. And the other thing to remember, which don't discount this, in the midterm election year, which is what we're going in, the turnout on base drops dramatically. And so those voters will vote. They vote 65% for the Republican on the ticket. You're going to lose a huge chunk of them off the ballot. And so I think, Rep. Nelson, he will work hard. I know that. He's going door to door. He's got an uphill battle, though, I would say, in that district.
Well, this is, again, we'll just talk generally. There's so many seats that have to go a certain way to either keep the coalition together or put the Republicans in charge. And this is one of those ones they're going to be, looking at both sides. So let's go to 19. This is the open seat because Garen Tarr is running for the Senate seat, Representative Tarr. And this is, what is this? Mountain View Airport Heights. And she's a staffer, been around. You know Russell Wyatt, right?
I know both of them. Genevieve's been a staffer for many years. She was the head of the Young Democrats. She's really an outstanding candidate. Russell Wyatt has been very actively involved in permanent fund dividend, and he sort of reached out to me in that regard and has been sending me messages. And so I mean it's probably Genevieve. I think you're going to see all the most of the institutional people get behind her. But I will say, this is Mountain View, and I remember the first year I ran for office, Max Gruenberg ran for Mountain View against Randy Smith, who spent literally didn't raise any money at all, didn't do any campaigning, and Max Gruenberg won by 23 votes in Mountain View. So don't underestimate it. I think the times have changed a little bit. I think it's Genevieve's race to lose.
I wonder if you're like a Republican in this district, if you're like, damn. well, I'm not going to vote. It's probably going to happen.
It's a fairly favorable Biden advantage in terms of the makeup of what it was. And I don't know Genevieve very well. I gather that she has lived in that district for most of her life, if not all her life. I have in my notes, I'm like, Airport Heights, Costco. That's how I easily put it. And it's interesting. I will say, look, I'm an Asian American. I think that being in that community and being a person of color, being an Asian American, it helps, right? That's kind of what the district looks like a little bit. So I'm just saying that I'm not trying to play race card here, but I think in terms of connecting with the district, I'm sure it doesn't hurt.
We should give a plug to the restaurant if you want to go. Mongolian
Another
barbecue,
day.
right? I mean,
Another day.
let's just give a plug to the restaurant. It's great food. They cook it right in front of you. It's amazing.
And I'll just say this about Genevieve. You're right. She fits the district. She really does. And I remember going to meetings with her where she was running Young Democrat meetings. She runs a fantastic meeting, organized, to the point, keeps everybody on task. She, I think, is going to be a rock star in the Democratic Party.
Well, and look, I'll say it's a progressive district, so it is. I mean, I think when we talk, it's kind of it's going to be a debate of progressive policies, those sort of things. So again, when we're talking about who has experience, even looking at her background, I believe she's worked for numerous folks on the Anchorage Assembly, worked at the Alaska Center, and all these things.
Recently for Ivy Svanholz in the
Yep.
legislature. So, let's go into District 20.
Yeah, and I'll just say that district is 66% minority, 34% white. So I like never play, I never talk about that stuff, but I think it matters a little bit.
Yeah. Well, let's go to District 20, the UMed. This is fascinating. This is the one Ivy Svanholz is not seeking re-election for. Andrew Gray, who's very animated, very involved in the Anchorage Assembly meetings. If you've watched any Assembly meeting, you've probably seen Andrew Gray, military guy. He was only one who filed, and then all of a sudden, 4 people, and 2 of them are really well known. Paul Bauer, he ran against Ivy last time, got fairly close, not super close, but I think he was ahead on the first round, but then the absentees came in. And then Scott Kohlhaas is a really well-known libertarian, and then I don't know about this Jordan Hooray character, but
Yeah, that's a big chunk of my current district right now, and it's a very progressive district. Paul Bauer has run, former assemblyman. He did run against Svanholz, and he did fairly well. It should go to the Democrat, but this is one where ranked choice voting, who knows how that plays out. It would be a shocker if Andrew Gray lost, but you look at that lineup there, and you just wonder how ranked choice voting is going to turn out, and whether or not, does Gray win on the first ballot? I don't think so. And then if that's the case, where do his votes come from?
yeah, he's a very animated person. That's going to be a one race to watch. I think it's probably going to get pretty intense. Got anything there, Matt?
I just say that it's just interesting. Like on Scott, he ran for this seat in 2020. He got 6.2% of the vote. I did think it was interesting. He kind of messed up his filing a little bit. He filed for the wrong district.
Oh yeah, I
and it was
remember that.
It was a little bit of a clerical thing. So this Jordan Harari guy is he seems like a younger guy. He's an IT professional, works for Schlumberger. I don't know that much about him. So we'll see what happens. I think that the district does favor probably a more progressive candidate.
Is this you? Are you? No, you're.
No, I'm losing that. That's a big chunk of my current district.
Because you're, who are your reps now? It's the Snyder seat, and then.
In the new redistricting, it'll be the Snyder seat plus an open seat in North, which we'll get to in just a minute.
Let's go on to 21. This is one of the open seats now. Rep Liz Snyder. That was a shock to me. I mean, I didn't for any second consider her not running, and she just kind of at the end of the day on June 1st announced she wasn't running, and she's gotten behind Donna Mears, who was running for the Senate seat. This is another legislative staffer, Forrest Wolf. He's been a staffer for 10 years. I know Forrest very well. Been to Hawaii. His dad lives there. I've traveled with him, and he's a Republican, but he's kind of hangs out with everybody. So, and then these other 2, I'm not independents, but this is probably going to be one between those 2. That's going to be.
Yeah, this is going to be a hot race for sure. This is actually, this is half of my Senate district that I'll be running in, along with 22. And in full disclosure, I've known Donna Mears for years. My daughter went to kindergarten with her son, and they've gone to school together. They're now freshmen at East. I've known them, have traveled with them, gone on vacation with them. I've had Thanksgiving, Christmas with the Mears-Rayberg family.
So you've gone on vacation with them. I've gone on vacation with Forrest.
Yeah.
We could be the surrogates.
So
I have vacationed with none of these people.
And I know.
Matt, have you ever vacationed with Peter Knox?
Well, I know Patrick, Ian Schrock too. He's a good guy, and so I mean, good people in the race. And Forrest, of course, has been a longtime staffer. Donna Mears is she's got the support she'll get the support of the Democratic base, I think, and Liz Snyder's going to support her. And of course, I'm going to support Donna as well, but she's been involved in the community for many years, been in boards and commissions and on Northeast Community Council. So that's going to be a race to watch. I think Forrest is going to put up a good fight.
This is a lot of old Lance Pruitt's old district, and
it is.
She barely. I mean, he beat the ticket. I mean, he got so many more votes than Trump. It was like 12 votes. I think.
This is one I ran some numbers on also, and just again percentages of Republicans to Democrats. So the district hasn't changed a lot. It essentially lost. So from the current Snyder-Pruitt district, it lost Stuckagin Heights, which doesn't have a whole lot of voters, but tends to vote Democratic, but it picked up Nunaca Valley, which votes overwhelmingly. I mean, I typically get 65-70% of the vote in that Nunaca Valley. So it's actually become more Democratic. But if you look at the trending in there, in 2012 you had 59% more Republicans than Democrats. That used to be a pretty Republican area. Then when Liz Snyder ran, it dropped to 43% in 2020. So, it's a definite swing district. I think Representative Pruitt outperformed. And then it's dropped now to 25% more Republicans than Democrats, but that's not including the Nunaca Valley portion that it picked up. So it's definitely trending Democrat.
Well, this is one of those seats where if you go ask any voter right now, I guarantee they haven't probably heard of any of these people. So it's totally like what's going to happen with these campaigns, how much money gets raised, and how the campaigns go.
That's a fair statement.
Let's go to 22. This is the open seat in your Senate district, new one. Stanley Wright, he used to work he ran before against Ivey years ago.
He did.
And he worked for Dunleavy. Lisa Simpson, formerly Lisa Vaught. This one's pretty fascinating. Her campaign slogan should be innocent until proven guilty. She's currently under indictment for election fraud related to the Gabrielle Ledoux. Look at Billy. This is like crazy though. I mean, she really is.
Do we know, I don't know. To be honest, I don't know much about this person.
Lisa, she ran against Tuck in
Sure, but what's the
2012.
thought process here? Is that what's going on here?
I don't know. I mean, when she filed, I thought it was like a goof.
Like, I will say this: I think Stanley is like a stand-up guy.
Oh yeah, great guy. You know Stanley?
I know Stanley.
Great guy.
He has a great story about just his background, and I believe he served in the Navy. He actually he just finished his degree at UAA after years and years and years, and which is great. I mean, it just shows dedication. He's been working and serving. But he's run before. He ran for this district against Ivey. He didn't win, but I guess why I asked, I said, what's the deal here? Because he's going to be the Republican-backed candidate there. I can only imagine.
Oh yeah, they aren't probably getting behind. I mean, maybe she drops out. Maybe it's. But this Ted Asheed, do you know this? I don't. But he seems like a lot of people are talking about. Is it Asheed?
Ted Asheed.
Asheed.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, he's a lot of Democrats are talking about him. So he seems to be a serious.
Yeah, the party's getting behind him. He's going to have a good campaign staff. He's going to have a good campaign team, and it's going to be a race to watch. I mean, it's that district is it's one of those, East Anchorage, which is definitely trending more Democratic over the years. It's got combination of District 15 and 16. My current districts, which have definitely very much trended to Democrat, but that's going to be a race to watch for sure.
Let's go to 23. This is Eagle River.
And I would say that one I think is a Biden +7. So it's. I mean, I think that matters.
Let's go to 23. This is going to be a Jamie Allard. I mean, Roger Branson, nice guy, kind of homeless advocate, but he's run before, not going to have any money. Jamie Allard's going to be off the assembly, which probably will make some people sad and some people happy.
Well, again, so Roger ran against Jamie Allard for assembly.
He did, yep.
In the 2020 race, Allard received 6,000 votes, so like 60%, and Branson received 700 votes.
Yeah, no, it's not
7%. So I think it's fair to say that Jamie Allard will be a representative.
That is going to be loose.
Yeah,
in Juno.
You can call that for Jamie Allard.
Well, and I'll say this: look, a lot of people. Some people don't like Jamie Allard. I think that her district, for the most part, likes her. Like, if you, I mean.
Well, it's a matter of, Juno's like the assembly on steroids. I mean, you have to work with people, and if people see you as, there's a lot of examples of folks down there who nobody wants to work with because they just blow it up every day.
I acknowledge that, and I'm just what I was saying is that it's kind of vote your principles, vote your district, and I think that Jamie has, again, a lot of people get frustrated with her for the way that her positions, the way that she approaches things, but
I think it's more the way she approaches things in her
But
attitude,
again, I
not-
think
not so much
for the most part,
positions.
her district, she has a decent relationship with parts of her district. So, but the assembly is also different than the legislature, very much so.
Let's go to 24. This is another Eagle River seat, also open because both reps, Merrick and McCarty, are running for the Senate. I see this one as just a Dan Sadler. I mean, Sharon Jackson got beat by McCarty last time when she was kind of the de facto incumbent. She was appointed by Dunleavy after Dahlstrom became corrections commissioner. But you know, I see this one like Craig Johnson. I see probably Dan Sadler coming back to the legislature.
Yeah, two former incumbents. I think Sharon Jackson served one term and then lost. And
Almost one term.
Almost
Yeah.
one term, yeah.
Yeah, almost
She was
one term,
famously
that's right.
sworn in by
That's right.
Josh Revak and David Eastman
Right.
across the street.
That's
In
right.
the, remember that?
And then Rep. Sadler, he
courthouse.
was in for multiple terms, and then didn't he ultimately run for the Senate?
He ran
and
against
lost to
Reinbold,
Reinbold,
yeah,
right.
in the primary.
So it's probably Sadler's to lose, but you know, I think there's a PFD element there, and I think that could factor into this race to the extent that you know people are unhappy with the level of the PFD. That could factor into this race.
I just say him because McCarty came out of nowhere and he beat Sharon Jackson by quite a bit in the primary.
Yeah, and look, I worked. We may have overlapped. Sharon Jackson used to work for Senator Sullivan, doing veteran affairs work, and I worked with Sharon. I think, and Sharon's a very nice person. I think that I think part of it is resonating with that district. I think Sadler's going to pound the pavement. Again, he lost to Reinbold for that Senate seat by 17%. I mean, she beat him back.
Oh yeah, it was not close.
But with that said, I think Dan is personable. He gets out there. I guess it's going to be a question of, this is a plus 31% Trump in that district. It's going to be a question like how conservative is this litmus test that they run, and whether or not one candidate is viewed as fitting that bill. But I would say, do I think Dan is going to get out there and attend more events and do more things? I think so, but they're actually both very nice people.
I think in this district, one thing to look out for, I think you have sort of the chamber element of the Republican Party and the populist element. And I think this district is probably a little bit more inclined to vote a populist element. So I think whoever's going to be able to appeal to that is probably going to be the one that wins.
Let's go to 25. This is Palmer. We have Delana Johnson, the incumbent. I don't know much about Lawrence Wood, but this is kind of like a Republican situation. And Delana's been there a long time, formerly local politics in Palmer, so I see that as being very likely her retaining that seat.
I think so.
Yeah, it looks like, it's interesting. It looks like he's a retired IBEW, and he is.
Oh.
And
one of her sponsors.
And then I looked at if you look up Lawrence Wood, there's like a bunch of op-eds and writings by Lawrence Wood, who has very nice vocal support of Governor Dunleavy, and so again, I mean that kind of fits the mold. So it's not like, again, we'll see what happens. I mean,
I just don't see Delana having really any vulnerabilities. She's been kind of a
I think Delana that's the safe seat for her. I think her district likes her. She's a former mayor of that area. I mean, she's liked.
Let's go to 26. This is part of Wasilla. Chugiak, Kathy Tilton, the incumbent, and then we have two challengers, a Republican and a Libertarian, no Democrat in the race. Tilton's a minority leader. Again, I don't see very many vulnerabilities with her. She's been there since, I think, 14, so she's been there for a while, too.
She was a staffer. She's been in the building for a long time. She knows how the system works. I think she's done a good job with a pretty, with a challenging group of people, and I think she's probably going to get reelected.
Yeah, and I would say, Representative Tilton, there's only so many, if they take the majority, there's only so many people who would be elevated to a speaker position, whether you want it or not. But there's a handful of folks, and I think her name is certainly in that hat of people. Someone who has an institutional knowledge, someone has seen it from different ends. So I can't imagine that her district would change out at this point in time.
Let's go to 27. This is an interesting race. Wasilla, Meadow Lakes. David Eastman, the incumbent. Stu Graham, he's in the Wasilla City Council. He seems to be, from folks I've been talking to, he's the guy the anti-Eastman folks are going to get behind. and is he going to have enough juice to kind of Jesse Sumner, who's running for another race we'll talk about in a second, an open seat. He got really close to Eastman last time. I mean, very close, but couldn't pull it off. So this is one of those seats where, with Eastman, if he wins, and Allard, I mean, if you get to 22 or 23 Republicans, I mean, they become questions of, are they going to be reliable for a majority, for a caucus?
Eastman, they threw everything they had at him last election, and he came out on top.
Except this time he voted against the full PFD.
And that's the one thing that could take him down is that vote against the $5,500 dividend. Although what he would probably say is what he will say is because of abortion, right?
That's what Kirk said too. Kirk did the same.
So thing. I think that's going to resonate in that district. I just think he's pretty entrenched. He's going to be tough to take out.
The interesting thing is there's another guy, Brendan Carpenter. So what happens with this Stu Graham? It sounds like Stu Graham is going to be the one they're going to, anti-Eastman people are going to get behind. But what happens to this other Carpenter guy? Is he it says Democrat. Did I mix that up? I think he's a Republican.
I think he's a Republican.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That was a mix-up. Sorry about that. So, yeah, anyways, that's going to be one to watch. I mean, that's going to be one of those races they're going to probably pour resources into. 28 is an open seat. This one's really interesting because it's 4 Republicans. Probably the favorite is Jesse Sumner. He's on the Matsu Borough Assembly. Steve Menard, former city councilman, famously kind of recalled for trashing a hotel room and setting it on fire in 2012 in Sitka. I don't know, I kind of it's kind of my scene. Not really, but I mean, his mom's Linda Menard, he's kind of very well known. And then Jessica Wright is the wife of Stephen Wright, who's running against David Wilson.
Didn't you learn anything from Nat Hers is you don't describe people like that?
Well, she's a candidate, so I can do it, and I can do whatever I want.
I'm saying you don't describe people by their spouses. No, I'm giving you a hard time, but
I mean, I will, but some people don't
Nat,
like it.
I'm sorry, I'm giving you a hard time as well.
Well, no, he did apologize on the Twitter, so
Yeah.
he was talking about that other Jennifer Armstrong race.
Yes.
I think Menard is a well-known name up in the valley. Jesse Sumner ran a heck of a campaign last time, almost came up. I think it's probably his race to lose, I would say.
Yeah, 4 Republicans, no Democrats. That's going to be interesting how that kind of breaks down. When
Well, and I would say so. Jesse is involved in local politics. He's on the assembly. He's a small business owner, a home builder. He's shown a willingness to put in some of his own money if necessary. I mean, all those things is what you need to mount a winning race. And a lot of people had projected that he would run for this seat.
He filed a while back
Yeah,
a
but-
letter of intent, and then he wasn't sure, and then he decided to.
Yeah, and Jesse goes. Jesse can be seen down in Juno for different things as part of different organizations he's part of. He's involved. I think it would be his race to lose. Again, like he's involved in his local district. I think he was the bonus vote for his district at the convention, all these things. So he's done the right things. He's been in the right places. I can only imagine it's his seat to lose.
Let's go on to 29. Before we do that, I want to again thank our sponsors, the IBW, Local 1547, and GCI. And also, due to the technical difficulties and kind of how much time we're spending on these races, I think we're just going to do House today, if you guys are okay with that. And then maybe come back and do the Senate later. It's been an hour already, and we're having that Facebook Live issue. I know Bill really wants to talk about that Senate race, East Anchorage. But let's just do the House races for now, and we'll come back next week if that works out for you guys, and we'll do the Senate because it is kind of dragging out, and we have the Facebook Live issue. But again, I want to thank our sponsors, Local IBW 1547 and GCI. Let's go to 29. George Rauscher, the incumbent. I'm not sure about this Elijah Haas, but Rauscher's kind of a staple out there. People know him. He's been there. He fought off that Jim Culver race years ago that everybody thought he was going to lose to. Yeah, and George did really well.
Yeah, so. Rauscher's going to win that race.
Yeah, I mean it's a massive district, right? Like it's from
big, Sutton and all that area.
Sutton all the way to Glacier View to Glen Allen, all the way down to Valdez. So you got to work it, and it stretches north. The population density is not that big. It goes almost all the way up to Cantwell, and a little bit of Lake Louise. People who go out snow machining that area. But I know, in previous work that I've done, I know that he works that district. He travels. He doesn't just stick to the valley. He goes all the way out into the Valdez area.
People like George. I mean, he's just a nice.
People like him, and he's actually good to work with in the legislature. he's definitely, he represents his community and he's got his political, positions. But I find him good to work with, across the aisle on things.
He may not like you saying that.
Sorry, George, if I cost you some votes. On the PFD, he's good to work with.
Let's go to or District 30. This is the Big Lake area. We got Kevin McCabe. He won 2 years ago. He's the incumbent. There's 3 challengers though, and Doyle Holmes is a little bit well known out there. He tried to get the Dunleavy. He was one of the 10 people who tried to get appointed to the Dunleavy seat when Dunleavy resigned. He owns a hardware store, and then Joe Griffin and Republican and Jay Mendiola, Democrat. Do you know the Jay Mendiola?
I looked her up. She looks like she's a nurse.
Joy
a nurse at South Central, and I don't know much about her, but that's a very conservative district. I think Representative McCabe is going to be tough to beat.
Yeah, McCabe won that district in 2020 by 63%. So he outperformed President Trump. And then it's a Trump 43.5. So it's changed a little bit. It's interesting that what happened in some of these districts. So this district is massive. It now includes upwards closer to Fairbanks. It stretches further on the Parks Highway, which it hadn't necessarily stretched that much before. So it does include certain areas closer to the Matsu Valley, Meadow Lakes, Willow, but does get you all the way up to Cantwell, Denali Park, et cetera. So. But I will say, Kevin McCabe has a strong group of folks in the legislature that he can work with. I mean, if you observe him, I kind of see, whether you like it or not, I see him as bringing together 4 or 5 or 6 members that are kind of following his leadership.
I would say he's kind of acted as the default minority leader.
Yeah,
and he's gotten a lot. If you watch him, he was really kind of out there and angry and mad and kind of almost bullying in 2021, and this last session, he's been a lot better. And I think he and Cronk and some of these guys have figured out, like, look, if we're going to be in the majority, we have to have people work with us, and we can't be pissing everybody off and screaming all the time. So they both, I think, tempered themselves a lot this last session.
We'll see. Interestingly, again, towards the end, there was some acrimony amongst the conservatives. He was being criticized for budget stuff and positions on.
He also went after Eastman and motioned to table a bunch of Eastman's amendments. And all the kind of the really, really, really right-wing people came after him. But I think he's realized that to get 21 people or more, you have to be able to work with some folks.
That's actually an interesting, I think an interesting thing that you're going to see with ranked choice voting is, in the past you had the Republicans who would win, and some Democrats in some races who would just cruise to victory in a primary. And then they would have nothing to do for the general, and so they'd go out and they'd help other candidates or work on campaigns. Now you have everybody running in the general, and so no one's really going to be free to go out and work against others. So in that scenario, if you had this rift between Rep. Eastman and McCabe, then maybe one of those guys who doesn't have an opponent goes and works for the opponent's candidate. You don't have that this time because they both have contested races.
And this is a broader issue. We've talked about it's because so many of these races, the primary doesn't actually matter, but I think people will have to decide, do I take advantage of the summer months? Do I hit the pavement in August? I mean, I would, because I wouldn't want to be doing this in October, particularly in Interior.
Well, you also don't want to have a bad showing in the primary. Yeah. I mean, that could just be that could just.
But when it comes to, for example, how much obviously you should be knocking doors if you can, but when it comes to direct mail, you only have so much money for direct mail, for postage. Things are going up. I mean, I've seen the cost per mail piece, and it's getting ridiculous. The cost of signs have gone almost double. So I will say the question, and if you're going up on radio, on television, are you saving your stuff towards later in the cycle?
Well, but that's a problem too, because you're going to have the U.S. Senate race candidates, the governor's race, the House race. You're going to have like an inundation of.
Yeah, it's going to be an inventory issue as well. Can you get inventory?
Right, you're flooded at the end. Everybody, people probably have time bought up all in October and maybe even September, and so getting airtime is just going to be a challenge. So yeah, it's going to be a tough environment to run. It's going to be very challenging.
Let's go to 31. This is the Fairbanks. What part of Fairbanks is this? We've got downtown Fairbanks. So this is Bart Lebon, the incumbent, who beat Catherine Dodge in 2018 by one vote. And then he won re-election. He was with the coalition the first 2 years. Then he went with the Republicans, which kind of surprised me because he's a banker and he's just a very moderate. He's almost not a full PFD guy even. He's taken votes that have, I think maybe frustrated some Republicans. But Kelly Nash, I mean, I saw a post where she said there's two kinds of Republicans, real ones and traitors. And Bart Lebon's not a real one. Something along those lines. So
I will say this might be one of the this might be a example of ranked choice really playing out as it was designed by the people who pushed it, right? Like this is where you're seeing you're seeing a three-way race, a Democrat to the left, a Republican to the right, and where do people naturally fall? You fall in the middle. Like it's the Goldilocks. You know, you maybe fall in the middle here. So I also think, you know, Lebon is this well-known guy, right? He has been he served on the school board. He's just been around.
I think he's probably given a lot of people loans.
Yeah, he's a banker.
Car loans and home loans, and he played basketball
Yeah.
at UAF a long time ago. So he's a really nice. I was just really surprised he went to the Republican. A lot of people thought he was going to run against Kawasaki, and that's why he was trying to get his Republican credibility, you know, creds in order. And then he's not running against Kawasaki. So there's a lot of talk about him being, you know, if the Republicans can find a way to organize him being, you know, finance co-chair, maybe even speaker. I mean, I've heard these things kind of thrown around. So he's a very nice guy.
The other thing too is like, this is not a conservative district. I mean, it's downtown Fairbanks. So that's where, I mean, the numbers aren't great for.
Do we know this Maxine Diebert? Do we know anything? I should have called somebody in Fairbanks to ask. I didn't do that.
You know, I've just heard anecdotally that she's a good candidate, but I really don't know much about her. But I think, you know, it's going to be interesting to see the amount of damage that Kelly Nash inflicts in this race, and whether, you know, if she is able to damage Representative Lebon enough to give Maxine Diebert, you know, the opening to go ahead and get
There's
that.
two kinds of Republicans, Bill. There's patriots and traitors. And Bart Lebon is not a patriot, according to Kelly Nash. Let's go to 32, another Fairbanks seat. This is East Fairbanks, Fort Wainwright. Open seat because Steve Thompson's not running for re-election. Will Stapp, I know a little bit. He's pretty active in the Republican Party. Younger military guy. Timothy Givens, not familiar with. And then Van Lawrence. Do you guys have anything on either one of those?
Van Lawrence has run before. He's a credible candidate. I think he's on the borough assembly or city council. You know, he's a credible candidate.
And then Givens, yeah, I'm not, Matt, you?
I don't know.
I
don't really know Givens very well. To be honest, this is one of those districts where I think
it's a weird one.
It's a little bit of a weird district. It's a Trump favored district, so this is kind of represents Fort Wainwright, a little bit of a military crowd. So we'll have to see. To be honest, you know, Fairbanks is always one of those communities that they shake up. They do funky things. They go their own way. I mean, like famously, you know, Jay Ramras for lieutenant governor didn't win his own community of Fairbanks when he ran for lieutenant governor in must have been 2010. So they're known to do interesting things. So it's premature for me.
This might be another one of those, you know, this ranked choice thing. What does that do with two Republicans and a Democrat? How do these votes kind of reallocate and reshuffle? 33, we're going to just pull that up here, and we're going to say congratulations to Mike Prox, who also was unopposed last time. They must really like him up in North Pole. He's actually he's one of these guys who you wouldn't expect it because he's real kind of mild-mannered. But you see him out sometimes at the bars. He has a drink. He's just really fun to talk to, and he's actually got a lot of stories, kind of how he came to North Pole with his family when he was younger, and how he was working, kind of what he was doing during the pipeline days. Fascinating character, but yeah, unopposed twice in a row. Must be nice.
Must be nice.
If you ever go to North Pole, I recommend going to the Badger Den. It's a hell of a bar. It's a very interesting place. Anything there, Matt? Like Prox?
Oh, I mean, I think that's a seat that it's an interesting place. It's North Pole. I mean, I think the district is 50%. It's like a 50% Trump district, a very kind of conservative place, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm not really surprised, and I don't think. I mean, Prox is of all the characters in Juno, Prox is not the most talked about. He hasn't gotten into issues.
But within Juno, though, I mean, people kind of know him as this kind of he's a fun guy to be around, actually.
Well, there's a saying, the nail that stands up gets hammered down. So
That's
yeah.
Well, he has no opponent. So let's go to 34. This one's really interesting. This is the incumbent is Grier Hopkins, but he was put into a super Republican district. So I'm going to say sorry to Grier. I'm not sure I don't think he's going to make it. Tomaszewski seems to be the one they're getting behind, but this DeMar's guy, he's running too. So he's actually campaigning.
Yeah, I think Tomaszewski's gotten the endorsement of the Republican Party.
Yeah, he seems to be the main.
He's kind of the heir apparent. He's the picked, and I think most people say that this district is going to flip.
I think it's like a Trump plus 30 or 25 or something. It's a really bad district for Grier.
Yeah, tough district for Rep. Hopkins, no doubt. Well-known name, long-time family history. With Rep. David Guttenberg, with his Luke Hopkins.
His dad was the mayor.
His dad was the mayor. Yeah, I mean he'll put up as good a race as anybody in that district. But yeah, he's got an uphill battle.
Can we talk about parents? Like, a spouse isn't okay, but are parents okay? What are the rules here what are the woke rules on family?
Yeah. Well, this is interesting because it includes. It's a district that it goes. I mean, so it takes his district, which is like Farmers Loop, which is like, if you're familiar with Fairbanks, it's like north of the city. And then it kind of circles all the way around and stretches all the way down to Salcha, to Harding
He's got
Lake.
Eielson too.
Yeah, and so it does make it very, very difficult. It went from a Biden plus 1.5 to a Trump plus 26.
And he was also I don't think it's going to matter that much because of the district. He was the casting vote on he waited till the last minute to vote for some reason, and he voted no on the extra $6.50 energy rebate dividend. So I think Bill, you've been there a long time. A lot of people just vote immediately, so nobody knows
if there's
you're last.
If there's a controversial vote, you probably don't want to be last.
So let's go to 35. 35 is so far one of the most interesting races because it's the only race with more than 4 people. And if it stays this way, if nobody drops out, one of these people won't make it to the general. And it's, you got another staffer, Ashley Carrick, who worked for Adam Wool, running. We've seen several staffers. And then Tim Parker filed, and he seems to be, he was school board or NEA, very well known in the area. And then there's a few other Republicans, Constitution Party. Woo.
Yeah, it's a pretty Democratic district. Tim Parker got in first, and very well known, very well respected. Ashley Carrick, Democratic staffer for Rep. Wool for a while. I think it'll be one of those two, but this is going to be an interesting race to watch.
Yeah, if nobody drops out, it'll be the only race where we see the primary having an actual impact on the general. So,
yeah, I mean, I think the Republicans. Go ahead.
Actually, Kevin McKinley ran before against Wool a couple times, so he's actually known in the district.
Kevin McKinley is a well-known Republican involved in Republican politics, party apparatus, those sort of things. I will say, it's a Biden plus 9.5. It's a tougher district. It got more solidified in this way, and that's there's a give and take. So the fact that Grier's district got a little more conservative, it kind of shakes it up. So this is, this district was more fortified in favor of the Democrats. I will say, Ashley is a former staffer. This is kind of the year of some of the staffers rising up and saying, hey, we're going to run. Which I think is a good thing for regardless of party. But then Tim Parker is he is a well-known quantity. I mean, he's not only just known in Fairbanks, but he's known in Anchorage through NEA work. He's a teacher himself. He ran the school newspaper, and that's my background's journalism. I studied journalism, and I would run into him in my DC days, and we would talk shop about the school newspaper and all these things. So, look, I think Tim has a pretty good shot because people know him and he's pretty respected. So again,
what's going on? I got to say, we got McKinley, McNeil, McCabe, McKay. What's going on with these?
They had the Mick caucus. Down in Juno.
We have a new one, McNeil, Republican. Let's move on to 36. This is the Mike Cronk race. This district didn't change that much. It's that one that wraps around kind of all of Fairbanks, very rural. Angela Fowler kind of filed last minute Democrat, but this is a Cronk seat. I don't think there's he got last time there was like 5 or 6 people in the general, and he still got over half the vote. The big Democratic opponent was Julia Nilica, and she only got about 37% or something.
Yeah, she was a great candidate, and
she was a good candidate.
Yeah, really good candidate. Tough Republican district.
To be honest, it's probably good. Like for her, she's now the head of the USDA.
USDA, yeah.
So I laughed because I saw
gig.
that. I was like, I'm pretty sure she lucked out that
Much
she
better,
didn't win.
much better gig.
I will say, this district, interestingly, it actually grew. I mean, it grew. It had way more westward expansion. It's a massive district. I don't even know how you.
It's so big. I mean, it's like
represent.
the Neil Foster or the Josiah Pocketok. I mean, they're huge.
Yeah.
You have to have an airplane.
Yeah, I mean, it is massive. This is, interestingly, this is kind of this is where Don Young would have represented. This is that old kind of up to Fort Yukon, Venati. It goes all the way up to Arctic Village, and he lives out in Tok. I am so surprised that when you come back from Juno and you got to get in a car and drive for 7 hours, or you fly to Juno or Fairbanks, drive for 6 hours. I mean, he lives in a place that he wants to live.
I mean, he left Juno a few weeks ago, and then I saw him on his Facebook. He was literally in the middle of nowhere, like with this huge ATV, 8-wheeler ATV, like bearcraft.
Yeah.
I mean, like middle of nowhere, rural as you can imagine. I mean, I would say watching him, I think the first year he kind of struggled to find his way, but the second year, he's really been a factor in a lot of these, some of these bills, and a lot of what's happening in the House and the minority, the Republican side. I think if the Republicans find a way to organize, I think he'll be a big factor going forward.
But I mean, this district, I can't go look at a map. I mean, it goes all the way from Tok, and
it wraps all the way around
to Holy Cross, which is all the way on. It's in the YK Delta. I mean, it's geographically massive, but it represents different people, different priorities. I mean, the priorities and issues. I mean, I will say probably the one thing that they can all agree on is housing infrastructure and lowering the cost of energy. But I don't even know how you get out here, and it's going to be very fascinating to see what happens. But no, I think Cronk is obviously going to win. And
I think he's positioned himself, pretty well. Kind of like McCabe, he's learned. Hey, you got to get along, right, Bill?
Got to get along.
Yeah, but I mean, I will say that district previously was plus 26 Trump. Now it's plus 10 Trump. So again, it's his seat to win. It's just the margin. They took some of that district and watered it down a little bit, but it's still.
Do you know Angela Fowler, Bill? Do you have any information about?
No.
We'll have to follow up on her. Let's go to 37. This is former Speaker Bryce Edgman, unopposed. Also unopposed last time.
Yep.
So he's
well liked.
He's like Prox. He's just he's cruising. So he's. We'll talk about maybe a little bit at the end of this, just organization and what he might try to do, and depending on some of these numbers. Let's go to 38. This is a fascinating one. This is Bethel. This is the weirdest situation. So former Rep Bob Herron filed a letter of intent. Mark Springer, Bethel mayor, filed a letter of intent. Wielechowski announced she wasn't going to run for re-election. This Conrad C.J. McCormick guy files. Never heard of him. I call him. He's 24. He's a Bethel vice mayor. He's unopposed. I mean, what a weird kind of situation.
Congratulations.
So congratulations, Mr. McCormick. Let's go to.
Well, and I guess let's
go back to 38.
I'd be
real
willing
quick,
to take a moment to say, and this is this common theme where you have someone like Wielechowski who has served for not that long.
She was replaced Fansler, right?
She was appointed by Governor Walker. But I guess and Bill, I'll ask you this: what do you think is this broader? We're seeing a greater number of retirements. We're seeing people saying, "I'm done." I mean, and we're seeing it. I mean, you're seeing it more from the Democrats. I mean, do you have any thoughts on that? I'm just curious.
I think it's a few things. I think redistricting obviously is a factor in it, and I think you have people who are tired. I think people are exhausted, and it's mostly, I would say, the dividend. People are just exhausted over this fight. It's been 6 years since 2016 we've been fighting this, and people are tired of it. People are tired of getting screamed at by their constituents, and I think that's a factor in it. And people are just moving on. There's a lot, there's life after the legislature.
Yeah,
and I think I mentioned before, but there's going to be at least 15 with Hopkins. I think 16. I mean, there's going to be at least 16 new reps, up to maybe, depending on how some races go, it could be up to 20, which is half the House.
Yeah, next year's legislature is going to be wild. I mean, you're going to have all these new people in there. You're going to have 25% of the Senate at least is new, probably 40% of the House is new.
Up to maybe 50%.
That's astonishing. Yeah. That is an astonishing turnover. And when you have these huge issues that we're discussing, you got to get people up to speed so they understand them. So it's a long learning curve, and you know, in some ways, you know, I think we've made some pretty good progress on issues, and you start from scratch again.
Let's go to 39. This is Neil Foster, the incumbent. Now Ivanov almost, I mean, ended up being not as close. I think it was like 47-53, but Ivanov really went after him last time on the dividend, the PFD, and as a PFD guy, Neil became a true believer, didn't he?
Yeah, so yeah, that was in a primary. So I think Tyler Ivanov ran against him in a primary and almost beat him, and then ran a write-in campaign in the general and lost. This time it will be in the general. But you know, Rep. Foster, he's done a great job, and I think two factors. I think the PFD, he voted for a full dividend, which is huge for that district, and the Nome Port. He delivered with Senator Olson on the Nome Port, which is just a massive influx of jobs and infrastructure, and you know, great for the economy up there. That's going to happen.
And he wasn't. Oddly enough, he wasn't on the conference committee as the co-chair of the finance. But I think it was all about the dividend. That was really what it
wasn't
boiled
on the
down to.
conference committee, but you know, he's the co-chair of the finance committee. He's bringing home projects for the district. I think he's going to be tough to beat.
I would say, and you know, Neil and others, this is kind of the primary vote your district and kind of vote your principles, vote your district. And to what you said, he's really driven issues like infrastructure. I know that when you live in these places, you care about a set of issues that are so different than what we care about here in Anchorage. I mean, these are places that don't have running water, that don't have clean water and sewer, that lack reliable energy. And so, look, it makes sense that some of these issues are top of mind. And I will say that Port of Nome, it's all hands on deck. It's the Port of Nome is benefiting from the big federal infrastructure bill. There's opportunities there for resource development, for jobs in the economy. So, I think that we do see that Foster has in the past taken some hits, but I think some of those hits are gone now, right?
Yeah, I think he'll be fine. Let's go to the last one, District 40, another unopposed. We have Josiah Pocketok, who's kind of beat Liz. What was her name? Ferguson 2 years ago, and I think a lot of people expected her to win. He ended up winning, and he became a factor. He ended up going with the coalition, and he's unopposed, so he'll be a real factor. And wherever, if it's Republicans or coalition or whatever, he's going to be a big factor in that.
He will. He's a really good guy. I really enjoy him. I like talking, conversations with him, and he's moderate. He's looking out for his district, and he's done a good job. And I think he's probably going to be there for a while.
Well, and I'll say, it's Josiah and the Pocketok family are leaders in that community for the most part. Like they're well known, they're respected.
Dad's the board chair of ASRC.
Board chair ASRC, but also he certainly took a leadership role on energy discussions. He's fighting for local things, but he's also pushing back on some of the Biden energy policies, some of the activity happening there, and really pushing for some activity and development in the region. And I think that's what the region wants. I mean, it's a massive district. To have 18,000 people in a district that size, it's impossible to get to. And every single one of these communities up and down the North Coast or North Slope, it's a massive place to cover. But I think he's done a pretty good job.
He was able to, as a first-time legislator, become the sole chair of the Resources Committee in the House, which I think that's one of those more higher-profile positions. So, well, I again apologize to the folks for the technical difficulty with the Facebook Live, but I really again want to thank Senator Wielechowski for being here. We're going to try to get back with you guys, and we'll do the Senate one next time. Matt Shuckerow, Fathom Strategic Communications, and we're going to be doing more of these throughout the year, analysis and some debates and talking to candidates and looking at these races. But I do look forward to both of you guys coming back hopefully next week, and we'll go over the Senate races, one of which you're involved in. So we'll do that. And again, I want to thank our sponsors, the IBW, Local 1547, and GCI. And stay tuned for more shows, debates, and programs from here at the Alaska Landmine, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, guys.
All right, thanks. Appreciate it.
Well, it's an honor to be here at Centennial Hall, working for K2. I want to give a really great thanks to our star producer, Grace Elliott, over there by the door, putting the show together. And the whole staff of K2, Jamie Waste, Jeff Brown, Susan Fitzgerald, Katie Held. And can I hear it one time for Fort James?